Hello there, you beautiful people, and welcome to the first lecture in the numbers section of the Python Bible. Now, of course, no numbers section worth anything would be complete if it didn't tell you how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, now would it? In this lecture, we're going to do a quick run-through of all the basic mathematical operations, and also a very useful one called the modulo function, which might be new to some of you. We're also going to introduce you to another variable type called the float, and go over a special difference between doing maths in Python 2 and doing maths in Python 3, which can trip a few people up. So by the end of this lecture, you will be able to add, subtract, multiply, divide, and use the modulo function on numbers in Python, and that's going to serve as an excellent and strong foundation moving forward. You'll also have a deeper understanding of what operators are, and you'll also be familiar with a new variable type, which is pretty cool, right? So we have a lot to do, so let's boot up idle and get started. Alright then, so how does arithmetic work in Python? Well, all mathematical operations, like adding, subtracting, etc., all need a mathematical operator. A mathematical operator is just a fancy word for a symbol that lets us do a certain mathematical task, like adding or subtracting or dividing or whatever. So let me show you what I mean. Let's say we wanted to add together 2 and 3. Well, we would type 2, just like in here, just type the number 2, then the addition operator. In Python, the addition operator is just a plus symbol, which, makes sense, right? And then the number 3. When we hit enter, Python is going to know, because of the addition operator, to do an addition between 2 and 3. So all we have to do is type 2 plus 3, Python's going to do the rest and give us back 5. The key point that I'm trying to hammer home here, it's the operator that tells Python what it needs to do. So for example, what about subtraction? I bet you can guess what the subtraction operator is, right? That's right, it's just a minus sign. So let's say if we wanted to subtract 20 from 100. The way that we do that is 100, subtraction operator, 20. And when I press enter, Python's going to do 100 minus 20, and it's going to give us 80 back, which is correct. We can also combine together these operations. So for example, if we type 100 plus 20 minus 80, what that's going to do is it's going to give us 40. Okay, so now that we have addition and subtraction down, we come to multiplication, the bad boy. Right, so the multiplication operator is an asterisk or a star. You can find this by pressing Shift and then 8 on your keyboard. It looks basically like this. Okay, so the way that you do this, let's say if we wanted to find what 2 times 2 is. Well, for that we need the multiplication operator. So 2, multiplication operator 2, 2 times 2, Python's going to give us back 4, which is correct. Now, as a matter of style, it's always good to put a space around the operator. So, like, instead of just typing 2 times 2, it's better to do 2 space times space 2. Just like that. And this just makes it look nice, really, and just a bit less cramped. So that's something you might want to bear in mind. Now we come to division. The division operator in Python is the /, okay, just like when you're going to a website or something. It can be found next to the question mark on your keyboard. But anyway, if we wanted to find what 2 divided by 4 was, we do 2 division operator 4, and it's going to give us 0.5 or 1/2. With another example, we could do 10 divided by 5. It's going to give us 2.0. Interesting, isn't it, the way that we've got this 0.0 instead of just 2. Now, if you're following along on Python 2, or if you've ever used Python 2 before, you'll find this a bit strange, because one thing that Python 2 used to do was every division would just give back a whole number. Okay, so if I did 1 divided by 2, it wouldn't give me 0.5, it would just give me 0. And that used to make all sorts of problems, okay? Used to mess everything up sometimes if you didn't catch it. But in Python 3, that has been, I guess, fixed. The problem's kind of been removed. So the divisions now always give back a decimal number. But how is it actually giving back a decimal number? Because numbers in Python, and I guess in most programming languages, they're not all created the same. Okay, there's 2 different types of data that represent numbers. The first type we're already familiar with is the integer or int. So let's say if we have let's take the type function of the number 2. It's going to tell us it's an int. If I take the type function of 0.5, we're going to get this other one here called a float, or a floating point number. A floating point number is just a fancy way of saying a decimal number, basically. So we've got this completely different data type called a float that allows us to get extra levels of precision in our numbers, so we can go to decimal places rather than just dealing with whole numbers. This is kind of more or less automatically done, but it's something to bear in mind. Numbers are not all the same. They're basically two different data types, one for whole numbers and one for numbers that have a decimal point. The reason there's this difference is because basically, if you want more levels of precision in your numbers, you need to be able to store more information. So floats actually take up a bit more space in your computer program, a bit more memory than integers do. So a float takes up 16 bytes of memory, whereas an integer in Python only takes up 14 bytes, which is actually rather large as far as integers go. I think Java, it's only 4 bytes. So in Python, a float is 14% larger than an integer in Python, but you get all that extra precision. So it's just something to bear in mind. You've got two options available to you. So with division out of the way, let's move on to the last topic in this lecture with regards to these operations. Quite quick, right? Called the modulo function. Now, the modulo is weird, but it's very useful, and it basically allows us to find the remainder of a division. Okay, so the modulo operator is the percentage symbol. So, and you can find this in case you're looking for it. It's pretty much just you press shift and then the number 5 on your keyboard. So, for example, if we did this 5 modulo operator 3, we get 2. And why is that? Well, the reason is, it's not because 5 minus 3 is 2. No. The reason is because 3, if you divide 5 by 3, 3 will go into 5 once with remainder 2. So let's try another example. If I did 10 modulo 2, we're going to get 0. Why? Because 2 goes into 10 5 times and there's nothing left over. So the modulo returns 0. Basically, 10 is exactly divisible by 2, so there's no remainder. What if we do 7.5 modulo 5? Well, that's going to give us 2.5. It's going to give us 2.5. And the reason for that is because 5 goes into 7.5 once, and 2.5 is what's left over. So you can see the modulo operation, although it's a bit weird, it gives us the remainder of a division, which is sometimes quite useful. So yeah, I mean, we've really covered quite a lot in this lecture. I mean, as far as content there, we've learned how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, as well as use the modulo function. And you've also learned about a key difference between numbers in Python. They're not all the same. You've got integers and you've got floats. And you've also learned about a difference between Python 3 and Python 2. Python 2, whenever you used to use division, it always used to make it as integers. There was no concept of floats during division unless you directly expressed that you wanted floats. But in Python 3, you don't have to worry about this anymore, and it won't cause any problems when you're doing it. So divide away, I suppose. So what have we got next? Well, in the next lecture, we're going to learn about how we can combine all these operations together to make rather advanced operations. And we're also going to learn how to make sure Python works out the answer in the way that we want it to, rather than it calculating something behind the scenes. Now, this is a very useful skill, and it will stop things going wrong and you not being able to notice it. So it's very useful to know whenever you work with numbers in Python. And as usual, I can't wait to show it to you. So I'll see you in the next video.